Alright, so I assume Luc Besson doesn't need much of an introduction. He's been around for a long time now and has a few classics under his belt. But one of my personal favorites of his is a fairly recent movie. One that I don't think really got the recognition it deserved, and that is Lucy. Now granted, the story and overall plot in that one isn't exactly the greatest. But the action is so well directed and edited, and the pacing is so phenomenal too, that it just ended up being a really fun action movie and one of my favorites from the last 10 years. And with this one, another one-word title with a female name. It looked like Luc was trying to recreate the magic he'd managed to pull off with Lucy. And yeah, the two do share some similarities, but at the same time they're very different movies. And this one takes place during the Cold War in the late 80s up until 1990. But it's not a sci-fi action thriller, it's more of an espionage, political action thriller, I guess. It of course also deals with Soviet Russia, and the KGB is heavily involved. But the protagonist is this young woman called Anna, who is scouted as a fashion model. However, without getting into the details here, things sorta evolve from there. And well, I guess you could say that she gets sorta wrapped up in all sorts of intrigue and interesting situations. And I will say that the opening sequence here is excellent. It gets right into it and doesn't mess around, and that's exactly how you should start a movie like this. However, and this is in my opinion the movie's greatest weakness, it almost immediately starts jumping around within the timeline. 5 years later, 3 years earlier, 3 months later, this and that. It's constantly jumping around, and while I wouldn't say it's necessarily difficult to follow, it did make it feel a bit disjointed, and I don't think it flowed very well. Now there's a reason why it does that, and it does make sense. And sometimes it's very effective, especially toward the end. However, I still think the movie could have been better had it been trimmed down a bit and restructured. Because there is also some excess fat that could have been cut out. And I don't think the overall pacing is as good as it could have been. That being said, I did really enjoy the action and the suspense in this. I think it's absolutely top notch, and Luc Besson just knows how to do that sort of thing right. But I also don't think there's quite enough of that, which combined with some unnecessary bloat, makes the movie as a whole feel not as tight and significantly less entertaining than Lucy. But I do think there is still a really fun movie in there, and I still thought it was perfectly fine for the most part. Now that being said, there is a really odd thing with this movie, and it's a complaint I don't think I've ever had before. But whoever was in charge of making this movie period accurate did an extraordinarily poor job. Like there's a couple of laptops in this that are at least a decade too modern. And the same goes for the cell phones too, which everyone has by the way. And that was most definitely not the case back in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm also pretty sure I spotted a few very modern cars in the background. Oh, and they use technology like thumb drives and things like that, which again just is not era appropriate. So yeah, I have no idea what was going on there or why those things were even in the script. Which Luc Besson wrote, so he's definitely not free from blame here. And anyway, this is his project and he should have known these things don't make any sense. And if he wanted to have those things in the movie, he could have just set the movie in the late 90s or early 2000s. And that would have worked perfectly well. But you can't just go around rewriting historical facts willy-nilly and expect the audience not to notice. And this is such a weird issue too that I genuinely don't remember ever running into before. But it's definitely sloppy and just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That being said, at its core this is just a silly action movie and a fairly entertaining one at that. But it's far from flawless, and yeah, a few things definitely left me scratching my head. However, would I recommend this? If you're looking for a decent action thriller with a few twists and turns, sure. But if you're looking for a smart, well thought out, historically accurate movie, definitely not. So you know, maybe give this thing a look, or maybe don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.